1950 Census Searches, Part 1. Name Indexes, Expectations, Limitations, and Questions. This is Revision 1 on January 18th, 2022. YouTube doesn't allow me to edit or upgrade an online video, only submit a new version and usually delete the original. I decided to keep the original, but inform you guys about a newer version if it's available. So the original video was January 8th, 2022. I found out it had a sound bug in it. I thought it was me, but it turned out it was the system, and so this should be a cleaner audio. In addition to that, there is some new information that I want to share, and I redid some of the slides as well. The 1950 U.S. Census will become public on April 1st, 2022 at the National Archives. I'll abbreviate that as NA. NA plans to have a preliminary name index, that's the first time, on a rollout at the opening. This video discusses that index, the FamilySearch crowdsourcing name project, and name indexes in general. In video 2 of this series, I discuss locational tools, including 1950 census district and tract maps, census district definitions, and street indexes. Now, I found this statistic on FamilySearch that name indexes normally help to find about 93 to 98% of the names in a census. But I don't think anybody expects that we will have that high an accuracy rate for a preliminary computer-driven name index. If everything is perfect, there are lots of advantages about name indexes. It's an efficient way of finding people. You don't have to know the census format and anything about enumeration districts. You can go directly to the right image page. They should be linked. Indexes are available for previous censuses on subscription and free websites. And we do have this promised preliminary name index from NA available on opening day, April 1st, 2022. The disadvantages are that it won't warn you that your targeted person was not enumerated in 1950. That should be pretty obvious. But you're going to be spending a lot of time, a lot of variations of names, and you'll find out that the person was missed. You're going to have to be flexible in the spelling of names. You may have to learn alternate ways of searching name indexes. I'll talk about this at the very end. And of course, any index has garbage in, garbage out. So what's the online information on the NA name index as of today, January 18th, 2022? Well, there was a hint last March when the Archivist of the United States wrote in his blog that we're planning to use the current cloud technologies to ensure that the website, the narrow website, will be able to withstand the expected crush of users. We are also exploring ways to provide person names, which we know are the most common searches for family historians and researchers. Very interesting. But exploring, that's kind of a wishy-washy word. I'm exploring to how I can become a billionaire. It's not going to happen. Then Claire Kluskins in the NGS magazine in the fall-winter 2021 issue wrote that NA is exploring options to provide a preliminary name index based on handwriting recognition technology, which would not be fully accurate. And then the main press release came out on December 14th of 2021. This is from the National Archives News about 1950 census release will offer enhanced digital access public collaboration opportunity. And I'm going to quote from this December 14th news release. So the news release said that the National Archive will have a name search function powered by an artificial intelligence / machine learning and optical character recognition tool. Well, sometimes people use big words for simple processes. So I think we need to define these terms. I found a website that did that on the bottom. OCR recognizes text, including handwriting, inside images and converts it to readable text. As to this artificial intelligence machine learning, AI performs tasks that require human intelligence, such as learning from experience, making own decisions. What do they learn from? ML is a subset of AI that has the ability to automatically learn from the data without explicitly being programmed or assisted by domain expertise. And another quote from Arthur Samuel is a field of study that gives computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. Now, I have many questions about this name index, and just to make sure that I separate my questions and comments and assumptions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this background and change the font. So I'm going to change the font of this presentation and the slide background, as you see here, whenever I ask questions, give opinions, or operate on assumptions or speculate about the process. Remember, viewers, what Albert Einstein said: assumptions are made and most assumptions are wrong. Wrong. So my first question is, who or what is the OCR/AI/ML going to learn from before April 1st, 2022? Afterwards, will this process continue with public collaboration, or is this something else? I could see that in the production phase, this is speculation, although there was a great mobility of Americans after World War II, that the 1940 census of names and locations could help AI/ML with probabilities of names and areas. Did they use that? Did they use that? Also, a name index without additional search parameters, such as location, age, sex, birthplace, would be pretty useless, especially for common names like John Smith. What parameters other than first and last name will be searchable? You just don't have a name index. Can one do a no-name search, which on all those variables, which often is very useful when one initially gets negative search results? I don't know. Let's turn to FamilySearch, their name index project. And this is an online interview that was done that I found. I do a search every day on 1950 census to try and pick up information. And the host asked Jim Erickson of FamilySearch, how long is it going to take to get an index, and how's the indexing process going to work? FamilySearch was the lead for the 1940 census when it came out, and how it was how a name index was produced. And Jim says we want to capture more of the actual fields, more of the columns. It's actually about twice the size of the effort when it comes to the indexing over what we did in 1940 census, which was released in 2012. Well, there are more people, and he wants to do more questions. He continues, we do have some new technology, new innovations, new ways to get people volunteering that should make it go a little bit faster. So in terms of when it will get done, we're hoping to have it done within 6 months like we did the 1940 census. Now note that this was done on December 6th before the National Archives gave that press release about what they were going to do. I found this a comment about someone who looks like they know what they're talking about, who said that FamilySearch will start with a computer-generated index, maybe it's OCR, that volunteers can verify and correct prior to the publication of the index on FamilySearch. So my interpretation is that once FamilySearch gets the census schedule images after the opening, they and everyone else won't have them before April 1st due to privacy reasons, that FamilySearch will create their own computer-generated name index, and then volunteers, not AI/ML, are going to produce a fully proofed index that will be put online. They apparently are not putting their draft name index online. I found this a couple of days ago that they are serious, FamilySearch, that they're looking for a person, a temporary listing for 6 months. FamilySearch is looking for a marketing professional with technical skills to join the team that will introduce the world to the 1950 United States Census. We want to hire an innovative marketer who can help our internal content team publish pages and blog posts to help people find emotional, personal connections to the people and places that were documented in the 1950 census, which includes the entire population living in the U.S. at that time. Now let's talk about names in general and names put on census sheets. We'll do some things about name format logistics. And one can go to the enumerator's reference manual to find out exactly what was required to put down names. This is section 106, how names are to be written, for instance. Enter the last name, then the given name in full. So if the enumerator put down first, last name, that's going to create problems to a name index. You can read much of this. They talk about people who use initials for their first name. You should see that. And then in the middle it says, make certain that you have spelled each name correctly. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that in the instructions to enumerators. Of course, it's not clear how they're going to be able to do that. And you could always pause this and look at the rest of the information. Now, names don't magically appear on the population schedule. Census takers put them on that schedule. So let's find out who these people are, these 1950 census takers or enumerators. They had to be U.S. citizens, have a high school education or equivalent, able to understand written and spoken instructions, and able to understand people when they interview them. They could be immigrants with very strong accents. They were able to write neatly and legibly. However, they could ask to be let in to do the enumeration, but that wasn't a requirement. And some of them had to do this standing up. How easy is it for you to write standing up on a sheet of paper? And then they had to have their own fountain pen. The U.S. government wasn't going to supply that for recording information. So we may actually have ink blots on the schedule. And they had to be, and this is from Section 57, even though this is a 1940 cover, they had to be particularly careful when enumerating a household that no person is reading the entries you are making or the entries you have made for other households. So they couldn't see what you were writing, and if you were making a mistake, they couldn't say, oh, that's not the way I spelled my name. Then there are census taker situations that will influence what is put down on the sheet. Unusual sounding names, even false names are being given. Abbreviated names or nicknames. As I mentioned, the errors in order of names, and respondents might be illiterate and couldn't spell at all, couldn't understand some of the questions that were asked. Taking names, transcribing names from the schedule also has some problems. There may be poor quality census images. These, the 1950 census, no longer exists. After it was filmed, it was destroyed. And so there may be poor quality that cannot be checked on the originals anymore. And you can see faint writing, they're taped, they're ripped, they have ink blots, etc. Of course, there's the question about handwriting interpretation. And then there's an interesting write what you see format. You don't expect the computer to think, oh, should I write this or write that? You write what you see. You transcribe what you see. So for the 1940 census, when it came out in 2012, FamilySearch volunteers wrote what they saw. And if you go to their name index for the 1940 census, you'll find out there are people whose name is here ends. Here ends. How many people do you know have here ends? And the reason that they're named that way is because the enumerators were told not to leave any line blank. And after they did a block, they were supposed to put down, after the block, here ends block 71, block 72, whatever. And the enumerators treated that as if it was a name. Here is a person whose name is Extra. Extra. Have you ever heard of somebody whose name is Extra? First name? Well, again, it turns out, and I mentioned this just a second ago about blank names or blank lines, that you couldn't leave a line blank. And so this person is actually extra line due to misinformation. Information. Let me show you that. So here is where it comes from. You'll see that the fourth line here, the census taker put down extra line due to misinformation. Kind of a humorous way of doing it on the name index. And as I'll show you, it took two people who actually did this same mistake. Could that happen for 1950, especially for a computer doing transcribe what you see? Well, here is the top of the 1950 form. You'll see that on item 7 is the name column. That is the name column. If we look at the instruction manual, the enumerator manual, what to enter there, if the enumerator comes on a vacant or a residential area occupied by people who live elsewhere, non-residents, then they are told to put down after column 6, vacant or occupied by non-resident in that line. And then section 108 says that if you go to a residence that no one's home, but you know they will come back later, you leave a space for them, and then right under item 7, no one at home. So we might get people who are on the name index called no one or vacant or occupied. I'm going to be looking for that when it comes out. As to handwriting is not easy. Now, this is a classic example. This is from the 1910 census in Pennsylvania. And the enumerator actually made a mistake. They should have put down for that less than 1 year old son at the bottom a dash and then infant. And you can see that dittos aren't used, dash lines are used. You only have really one chance on a page to see what the name of the surname is of the family. And so this not christened yet posed a problem, because what this company did was they sent these schedules overseas, cheaper labor, to transcribe. And the transcriber came to this line, couldn't quite figure out what it was, and then the index shows what they transcribed, which was watch not teneget donato. So we might kind of expect to see some funny things like that. So this leads to a question about quality control of the transcribed names. When the 1940 census was released, there was a community project led by FamilySearch. It was a big deal. It attracted lots of people to try and transcribe the name index. And they did this from beginning. There was no computer-generated preliminary name. And you can see a number of organizations joined, but FamilySearch was the main one. It was well organized, called a crowdsourcing venture. They eventually had over 160,000 volunteers, transcribers. 2 people saw the same census page. A computer compared them. the results of them, and then a third person resolved any conflicts. They could make an independent judgment. And it probably took about 5 months to totally complete the project. I expect we will hear much more about FamilySearch's 1950 project before opening day. As to the National Archive website, that press release on December 14th, they indicated they were going to provide a, quote, transcription tool to enable users to submit name updates. This will allow other users to find specific names more easily, and it provides an opportunity for the public to help the agency share these records with the world. So my question is, how did they even arrive at the name transcription tool? If I couldn't find a name on the preliminary name index, but then used the April 1950 location of the person and locational tools and found the record, and then submitted the corrected name of the person to the NA's database, did I do any transcription? I think transcription implies more than what may actually happen here. So again, the press release says that NA officials are encouraging interested members of the public to use the transcription tool and assist the agency to make the records as accurately as possible. We are looking forward to collaborating with the public to refine and enhance the first draft of OCR created names. Notice there's no other mention of the AIML. This is a great example of automating as much as we can and then collaborating with the public to make access happen, said Chief Innovation Officer Pamela Wright. Well, this leads to some questions. How would people be recruited and organized to do transcription tool changes? Or is it only people who are upset because their particular person's name appears wrong on the index? How would quality control be maintained? How would redundancy of effort be avoided, or does it matter? Will this conflict with what FamilySearch is planning for a 1950 name index with a usually very large volunteer pool? Would submitting changes to the NA's name database then encourage the public to try to submit corrections for any of the parameters that were possibly recorded by the OCR AIML process, like place of birth? Now, place of birth is interesting because for a number of people in the 1950 census, what's there will be wrong on the schedule, on purpose, per the enumerator handbook. I'll show you that in a second. So here we have from the 1950 enumerator handbook about place of birth, and I will increase this. And for a person who was born in a hospital or elsewhere outside of the state in which his family was living at the time he was born, enter the state in which his family was living, not the state in which the hospital was located. So here is a situation where some people will say, I wasn't born there. I was in that state. I was born, in a adjoining state. I was born on a family vacation somewhere. So there may be a lot of people who would like to change the record. It's a historical record on the schedule. Which project, FamilySearch or NA's name index, will produce the higher resolution or accurate name index, or does it really matter? If making a preliminary name index, even from handwritten scanned records, is relatively easy to do today by automated programs, then the major subscription genealogy sites may also have their own, hopefully free, indexes soon after the census opens. Will this be a blessing or create more work for researchers and more internet traffic looking through a number of false positives? What is the relationship, if any, between NA's transcription tool and their OCR/AAML procedure? I mean, are they redoing this preliminary name index again and again? Or once it's produced, then it's just augmented? Or are they just going to automatically add submitted name corrections to the searchable preliminary name index similar to what Ancestry.com does, and I'll show you this. Or is there something else here? So let's look at one company, Ancestry. I think this is from Ancestry. We're going to look at this 1940 sheet from Brooklyn. We have Max, Celia. Celia has an X next to her name. She gave the information. Samuel, Joseph, etc. And the question is, what's Max's last name? Now, this particular company, you can click on that, and you can see what the transcriber put down. And the transcriber put down KUROFF for the name. Do you agree with that? You think that's what it is? Well, someone else came along and augmented the record and said that's not Max Kuroff, that's Max Krevoff. And you can see in the record the two names, the transcribed name, the edited name, and they're both searchable. They're both searchable on the name index on Ancestry. Now, I know it's Krevoff, and I'll show you why. In fact, I have a little present for the Krevoffs if they ever contact me, because actually as part of my collection of memorabilia, I have this preliminary population schedule. It's actually green of the Krevoffs. They were not home. They were not home. The census taker left this to be filled in, and then when he got it back, he transcribed it directly onto the census sheet. And he actually did a poor job because there's a number of these things on this preliminary that didn't quite make it to the actual schedule correctly. Max Krevoff. So I have a present for the Krevoffs family. Hopefully in the next few months before the 1950 census becomes public, we will gain more information about the National Archives 1950 website. However, we may have to wait until the end of March 2022 for some official definitive answers, and I'll show you why I think that may be true. It turned out that today, one of the reasons why I make this revision, I saw that the National Archives is going to have their own genealogy series of talks on the 1950 census, starting in March. And they have 4 topics shown so far. There may be more added. And one of the topics is the 1950 census website design, development, and features to expect. And that won't be put, at least on the video, until March 30th. So they're really waiting pretty late in order to tell us what's going on. Also, the plans of FamilySearch should become clearer in the next few months. When those projects tell us more specific information about what they're doing, I will update and revise this video. All right, now, it's possible that with this preliminary name index, you're not going to find your people. And this is some general advice for any name index. You need to know about wildcards so that you can use an asterisk or a question mark to increase the variation of the name to get them all at once. You have to realize that less is more once you start getting negative searches. Search for children. Don't use the last name of the person. Don't use any of the name of the people if you have enough search parameters. You need to relax your assumptions. And of course, there will be lots of locational tools available. They're available right now. Part 2 of this video series will tell you about it. I suggest you prepare for the opening as if the preliminary name index will not exist. Use locational tools discussed in the video 2 to make a list of census district numbers, ED numbers, from locations or addresses for your 1950 targets before the rollout. So if that preliminary name index doesn't work, you can switch to locational searches. Wouldn't it be a shame if your target people were not enumerated and you spend quite a bit of time doing an extended name search for them when you can find out from locational tools that the residents did not participate in the count and they were not on the 1950 name index? So here is the second video. I'm thinking about also revising this today. Good luck with your 1950 census searches. This will be the first one that I will be on. I'm looking forward to it. This has been another of my JDW talks. I have YouTube talks on census resources, Ellis Island, and being a retired field biologist, natural history topics, and virtual birding field trips. I show you a address that will take you to all of my YouTube talks. Good luck in your searches.